Tim Leonard, welcome to the lockdown sessions. I'm loving your background, by the way. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks, Brian.
Tim, you are an experienced facilitator and trainer. You've worked with organizations, public and private sector, from around management, professional skills. You worked as a coach. You and I met each other back in the mid-noughties, would it have been? Yeah. Something like that. When you completely let me down in a training pitch, and I had to step in and take... You don't remember it the same way.
What was this?
I remember the first time we worked together was at Bexley, wasn't it? It was at Bexley Council.
Yeah.
They were doing a leadership program, and you and I were given the auspicious opportunity to run the sort of promotional workshop for the executive team around leadership behaviors. We ran this for a day together.
Oh yeah. I remember in the council chamber, wasn't it?
Right, exactly. not the easiest place to navigate around a council chamber, but we seemed to have this great connection when we were sort of doing those workshops together, and more recently we've worked also in other public sectors on programs. I wanted to bring you in to these sessions because when we chatted last week, some of the stories you were talking about how you'd been going through and dealing with the pandemic just seemed to resonate so much for what we've done in these lockdown sessions, which is to kind of reflect back on learnings and observations and what we've seen. And I know you had to even think about, did you really want to even come on and kind of share it? So thank you so much for coming on. And my starter for 10 for you is simply, when you look back over the last 11 months and your experience of lockdown, your personal experience, what have your observations been around yourself, your family, and perhaps even your clients in the kind of training you've been doing?
Yeah, it's been, I mean, the history of the year has been, I mean, everyone's had their ups and downs with it, but it kind of kicked off for me in February when I managed to break my leg, femur, in bed. Don't ask. And if you are going to ask, then I would refer you to Futurama, a cartoon, Death by Snoo Snoo. But I mean, whatever I say is going to be the wrong thing.
Yeah.
But they had me in and out. And if you break your leg, that's normally a major thing. But I was in and I was out within 2 days. So that was good. It was an interesting experience and fantastic care from the NHS. Absolutely brilliant. Obviously, none of us can speak highly of them. I had a number of other things happen throughout the year. I had an eye operation. I had a cataract starting, so I had that sorted out. I'm going to have the other one sorted out. So, and that was great. My youngest son has managed to get a job at the BBC. He's not met anybody there, and this is where it's changed. The whole process is being done remotely, and he's working remotely, which is extraordinary. My best friend died in November. My sister died on the 20th of January.
It's just so sad.
Yeah, but there are high points in all of this. It's the contrast, the light and the dark, and I think I've been impressed with we've seen the best of people, and we've also seen some of the worst in people as well. But I think it's wherever you want to shine your light, where you shine your torch, you can look at the good or you can look at the bad, and you can be encouraged by the good or you can allow the bad to overwhelm you. And I think part of our responsibilities to one another is to focus on them. And it's very easy to become self-absorbed and thinking about ourselves. When in fact, actually, one of the things you can do is if you focus on other people, you probably get them through and get yourself through at the same time. We've all been through tough times, and I've seen tough times both in business and other places. But it's sometimes focusing on other people. I think one of the other things that we often neglect is sometimes when there is somebody who's in a pit somewhere, whether that be a physical one or a mental one, that we forget the people who are looking after them. And it's always if you like, the subject, the patient, the client, but it's also the people who are trying to support those people that we need to look out for as well, because they do take a burden, and you must see this and feel it to a degree when you run your coaching sessions. It's sometimes we take something away from us with respect to that. We're not all untouched by what we hear and what we see and what we feel with all.
We're not emotional islands, Tim. It would be tragic if we were, but when you talk about how people go through it and kind of they find their own path, if you like, I believe that's true, because we don't know we're resilient until we have to be it. You would have gone into this time knowing you were resilient. I think there's a difference. People sometimes don't know they're resilient until they have to be. You would have come into this knowing you were resilient. You would have known you're going to have to call on that resilience if this drags on. I'm wondering, as I'm sort of sitting here, were there moments when you consciously had to draw on your resilience that you've built up over the years? Or was it more that because you are resilient, you've kind of moved through the last 11 months?
I think for me, I know I will get through it, or you won't. It's either way. But there's a line which is, this too shall pass. And it's recognizing that whatever you're in at this moment, it won't always be like that, one way or the other. We used to live next door to a guy called Julian Pringle. And he was the commandant of the Royal Marines. And one morning, the IRA blew him up. And he was in his car, trapped with his leg blown off. But he had to believe he was going to get through that. He'd seen people get nicked by a bullet in Borneo and die of shock. And so there was this thing that you keeping yourself going and keeping other people going around you. And I think, it's this old story that if you think you're going to get through it, you will. On the other side of that, there must be a lot of people who thought they were going to get through it who didn't. But I mean, we're not hearing from that. But I think that all you can do is keep yourself motivated, keep yourself going. And I think one of the key things as well around this pandemic is to keep yourself going, and especially towards the end, because it's very easy when you think you're going to get out of this situation and you can see the lights coming, you can see the helicopter coming, and people go, it's nearly over, and that's when they go. You can't give up at any point. You've got to keep going throughout all of this. And it's, again, focusing on not the finishing tape, but beyond the finishing tape, I guess.
No, when you were saying that, the image that came into my head was, when I'm driving down a country lane and it says 30 miles an hour, and then suddenly up ahead I see the 50-mile-an-hour sign.
You're not going to incriminate yourself,
right? And there may have been moments in the past, I wouldn't want to confirm or deny, but there may have been moments in the past that when I see that 50-mile-an-hour sign, I start to speed up. I don't wait until I get to the cross the line and then go. You must have then spent most of lockdown just at home with your wife, with the kids around.
Yeah. I've been out. I mean, I've done a couple of face-to-face courses when lockdown finished. It was suspended. Most of it's been online. Doing CMI 3 and 5, and some other stuff as well. I've developed a course on ISO 30414, which is this new one. It came out in 2019 for HR, and giving strength to HR in terms of its credibility in managing the workforce, etc. But yeah, I've been at home, and I've been out probably about 12 times, and that's including the eye operation and breaking my leg. But I think one of the key things after my accident, not when I had my original injury that put me in the wheelchair, when you're flat on your back, looking at the ceiling all the time, there's a number of things that go on inside your head, and getting comfortable inside your own head as well. And I think that's probably where the resilience comes from. That sort of almost meditative state that you can get to, where all you've got is your own head, because we didn't in those days. We didn't have flat screens or televisions that you could look at, and I couldn't read a book. So it was really, pretty well. It was 12 weeks staring at the ceiling, thinking about what all of this really meant.
And how do you even make sense of that as a team? I mean, that in itself is, where does that come from?
I don't know. It might be, again, this family thing where I don't know. Part of it could be genetic, so it's nothing to do with me. It might be, my grandfather was in the Welsh Guards, and he served in the Somme from start to finish. My father was shot down in Korea. He fought in the Second World War, but he was shot down in Korea in 1950 and trapped in an aircraft for 2 hours, and then rescued. And then he was paralysed in one leg, but we're not very lucky with legs in our family. We only got one good leg between us. But he stayed in the Navy and he carried on flying.
Like Douglas Bader.
Well, that's an interesting one as well, because people were saying when I was in hospital, we can get Douglas Bader to come and see you, but that never happened. But the ironic thing was there. But I'd set up a flying club in IBM in the early 80s, and 1982, 83, Douglas Bader died. And rather than build him a statue, which they had since done anyway, but they offered a flying scholarship. And I got the first one of those. So I can't walk, but I can fly. Yeah. Which is an interesting thing in terms of, and that was an interesting thing. I mean, for me, it was, I wanted to fly. I can see how I can fly. But for other people, that changed their perceptions. I remember one manager, I was doing a reasonably responsible job. And he said, or he was overheard saying, if you can fly an aeroplane, maybe we can give them something a bit more responsible. And that was the kind of starting point of my career, moving forward, etc., where people gave you an opportunity and all you've got to do is then take it with both hands and do something with it. But so that meant, my father's example really meant that, there wasn't the opportunity to sit around and mope. You really do have to get up, get off, and get on. It was no counselling, no. And I think, for me, it would have been bad. Somebody said, "How are you? Are you okay about all this?" I would have thought there was more of a problem than there was. And, you know, immediately after the accident, you know, I thought, if I can smile, it can't be that bad. And, you know, it's that, again, self-taught conversation, moving yourself through it, but knowing that you will get through this. And maybe also, as you're going through it, thinking about other people around you, if you can. It's very easy to implode, but it's, you know, being aware of what's going on around you, and being conscious of what's going on around you as well. I think, you know, yeah.
How's your wife and kind of kids gone through it? What have you observed in there? Because it's a long time to be together. Your kids are older, like the ones that live in my house. I think it's quite nice to have 20-somethings around. You don't kind of expect it so much these days. So I'm kind of grateful for that. But how have they all gone through it? And as a family unit, have you seen a difference in the family connections?
Yeah, I mean, we've always been close, and we've always, you know, the nice thing about this type of job, I was able to be home a lot of the time, and
right.
You know, and but we've grown closer. My wife, you know, works very hard, you know, keeping us all together, and I think my biggest concern is for young people, you know, in terms of, you know, you and I. We've been out there, we've had fun, we've done everything, and yet these people have not yet been able to kickstart their lives. You know, they've been studying, they've been doing what they're doing in order to get jobs, etc. And to start to have fun and start to see the end of this is important. The concern I have is the constant looking at the news, waiting for the light at the end of the tunnel. I think, you know, we've got to be very careful about how we describe what's coming in terms of changes, in terms of the regime that we're all having to manage, that recognise that it's got to be a fluid thing and it's not a timetable. You know, that people have to recognise that, you know, if the enemy changes, we've got to adapt. We've got to do something. You can't just go, you know, by this date and this date and this date, and then, you know, think that that's going to happen and start berating people when it doesn't happen. You know, we've got to recognise it's not a, you know, the future's moving as fast as the present. We haven't got a definite handle on this yet. It's coming, but you can't put a schedule to it at the moment. And I worry about that.
Human beings are designed to look for certainty, so it creates a very difficult moment for us when things are so volatile and uncertain. It's, you know, I remember when I used to bring up the word VUCA at training sessions, people used to be like, "Oh wow, that's a cool word, you know, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous." And it's this VUCA world that we're now all living in, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact is that actually people are getting tired of even that phrase just in the last year. But human beings are designed to want to know that things are concrete and secure. We like sameness with exception.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're dealing with now is not sameness with exception. It's massive, constant change. And here in the UK, the more I hear, you know, when you were talking about, you know, you mustn't sort of give in now in the last 10 meters of the race. But at the same time, when the goalposts keep moving, there's this kind of challenge of when are we going to be allowed our freedoms back? At what point does the government say in any of these countries, you know, now it's okay? How do we move from being almost institutionalized in the last 11 months back into social settings? I think people talked about the new normal, Tim, and I just would say to them, look, this is normal. Forget the word new. This is normal now. I wonder how long it will take the world to get back to pre-pandemic levels of interaction and socializing.
It's I don't know. I really don't know. And I think, you know, I don't have an answer for that. You might just have to wait and see what actually materializes. And that is a difficult thing. You know, that's a difficult thing when you want that certainty, and it's not going to be provided. It's not anybody's fault. It's not going to be provided, and you have to accept it. And I think there's, you know, I really am not a Christian by any stretch of the imagination, but there is a prayer I remember, which is, God grant me the courage to change the things I can, the grace to accept the things I cannot, and the wisdom to distinguish between those two. And I think it's that recognition of, you know, you can be sitting down, or we can be talking about things that we can't influence. And it might be important to be able to work those things through and just get some support on it. But I think it's recognizing, you know, focusing on the things that we can have power to change and to influence. But at the moment, a lot of that power is taken away from people. They don't have choices. Those choices are removed, and they're being told what they need to do and what they have to do in order to keep themselves safe. And if they don't do that, then they also need to keep other people safe as well. And it's that recognition that's not just about you, that it's about other people as well. And that's a difficult thing when you're the one feeling the pain, but recognize that there are other people who need to be kept safe, and your actions could prejudice their safety.
Mm. I do sense that there needs to be some kind of reckoning for people. I look at my parents, I look at friends. We've become used to not seeing each other. And people are talking about wanting it, and I can see it and feel it, but I'm also hearing, you know, still a nervousness. Oh, I'm not going to travel. The borders are shut. We can't really leave here without a very good reason. And there's a part of me that's like, you know, if I've had the vaccine and I've done the right tests on leaving and on arriving in places, I should be able to go where I want.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to feel a little uncomfortable that actually I can't make that choice. But so when you go to choices, I think this is really interesting, because I think organizations have got similar choices that they've got to make around, you know, you talked about well-being. I wonder how many people have suffered silently during this process. The real after effects of the lockdowns, the mental health, the mental well-being. You were talking about, you know, getting comfortable in your head, that idea of resilience. Were there moments when your resilience left you, failed you? How did you ensure that? People, I'm convinced, would love to know how, on those perhaps darker moments, you were still able to call on a drive that brings you through, an inspiration maybe of something.
I can't tell you anything other than I've not let it over, you know, not let it overwhelm me. I mean, you know, I can't really answer that. There's not a North Star I can point to and I say I look at this or I look at that or look at the other. I mean, obviously there's ideas and concepts around things in general life that we talk about and are inspired by, but there's for that, no, it's just something that comes from within, and or has come from within. And it's not something I take any credit for. It's just there, and I can't explain it other than, you know, it's like breathing. You know, it's part of you. It's you know, as I said, I don't know where that comes from. Whether it's my social conditioning as a child, or, you know, genetically from I guess my father's side of the family. I'm not saying my mother's side hasn't got it either, but I don't know if that's what it is. I can't. And the struggle here is you know, you'd want to be able to tell somebody something, and I haven't got any answers for that other than, you know, it being, you know, centered, I think is the term, would be this sort of, you know, sense of comfortable within your own skin, you know, within your own consciousness, etc. And you know, I can't sort of say any more than that, really.
What have you observed in the clients that you've been working with? How have they all been dealing with the pandemic? Because you often work across various sort of, you know, avenues of the public sector, well tenured in public and private. What have you observed? How have they
I
dealt?
haven't seen, yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, doing courses remotely, you don't see the people in the same way you would have seen them before. I haven't detected very much in terms of issues or problems. You know, I think there may be a degree of anxiety about what will happen after, you know, furlough ends, and you know, what that will actually mean to people's jobs and revenue stream, etc. But it's not, if you like, a point of discussion. It's just a sense of it might be there, you know, in terms of when people are saying, I don't know what's going to happen, but I've not heard anybody talking, you know, doom and gloom, etc. about it. So nothing really to report on that either.
I suppose from one perspective, that's really like super positive, because if they're just moving forward, that's, you know, they're showing that kind of corporate resilience as an organization. When you do reflect on this last year, what have your key lessons been? Like, what have you learned? You've talked to me before about growth mindset. What's been your learning? Where's there been some growth?
Growth. I suppose I've learned to. I've played a bit. I haven't put anything on TikTok, but I've watched a few things on there. There's been some interesting sort of debates, discussions, various people there that I've been found interesting. Simon Sinek.
On TikTok?
Yeah, just little clips.
Uh-huh. Imagine you doing like wheelchair spins or something and getting your wife to film you.
No, I haven't been doing that, Brad. No. No, I wouldn't. I mean, this is, as I said to you, and this is the first time I've done anything like this. And I've kind of eschewed the that kind of thing, because I don't know. I don't feel comfortable with it. But yeah, so and you know, so people like Simon Sinek, listening to, you know, discussions with people like Jordan Peterson. Interesting. You don't always agree with people, but nevertheless, it's always interesting to hear the other point of view. It's also interesting to see how people, you know, present their arguments, and how other people respond to those. I find that fascinating. You know, the way that people, you know, try to influence and persuade people to their point of view, or just present their ideas. I find that, you know, and the level of conviction some people have around their ideas as well. I think that's interesting. I always remember the Gordon Brown inviting Margaret Thatcher to Downing Street, because he respected the fact she had convictions. I mean, she was on the other side of the political spectrum to him, but he respected the fact that she believed in what she believed in. And I liked that. I liked his generosity in doing that. He doesn't normally get very much credit, but yeah, and she went along with it as well, which was I thought it was a kind and generous thing to do. But I think I like people who know what they're talking about. Yeah.
Well, it's why we connected so well, Tim.
Well, because you know what you're talking about. I don't.
Look, you can't beat an erudite influencer for sure, as long as they haven't been on some psychometric workshop where they've learned to adapt their behavior and and it's disingenuine. As per our chat before we went on to record. Tim, when do you think you'll be back inside client offices? I mean, because actually people listening won't know this, but you like to get up at like 3:30 in the morning and leave home, right? And you will leave home at that time of day to get to a client site. So I'm thinking with that kind of 25 years of getting up early and going into offices, the last year must have either been a pleasure or just absolutely frustrating because you need to be around people. So when are you going to be back?
I think, well, everyone, I mean, this is the schedule, isn't it? Today, people are talking about August, let's say September. And I think it's, I'm just going again back from my own experience. There were milestones in terms of your rehabilitation after an accident, and you don't always make those. If something happens, you end up with a setback, and you have to go. That's a real blow. When you think, you can see other people moving forward, and that's what we'll see nationally. We'll see other nations doing really well. We might see Australia doing well. We might see New Zealand doing really well. And we'll all be going, oh, why aren't we where they are? We've got to run our own race. And there will be that from a national point of view, and there will be that from a team point of view, and there'll be that from an individual point of view. There will be things that you might be ahead of the game one minute. You might have to take a step back a bit later on. But I reckon I'm hopeful in September. It sounds a really long way off, but
yeah, it does, right?
The scale of things, the time that things take to evolve, I'd be quite comfortable with that. Personally, I'd be comfortable with that. I know that would be the worst thing a lot of people could possibly hear. But if you wanted to know when the sunlit uplands were, I would say September. And I think that's an analogy. I think it was Winston Churchill's one, wasn't it? But he ripped it off from H.G. Wells. But yeah.
It's I think the country will become disquieted by the thought that they have to wait for everyone to be vaccinated. Have you had a jab yourself?
Not yet, no. There was talk about Spinal Injuries Association been talking about possibly talking to a GP and things, but I'd feel awkward about jumping the queue. So I'm not going to be doing that. I'm going to wait until I get called. I'm 63. There will be times. At the moment, the only person in the family who goes out is my eldest son. He gets up at 4:20 every morning to go and do his shift as a marine engineer in the dockyard in Portsmouth. And he comes home, he strips off at the front door and goes and has a bath. So there's
obviously inside the front door, not on the doorstep, because there's exposure issues there that I think from a legal point of view you probably don't need to share.
Well, it is inside, yes, but it would be a problem if it was outside because we're quite remote from everybody else. But yeah, we do let him come in.
Yeah, good.
But yeah, again, it's that how people have coped. My youngest son will be playing games on Call of Duty or whatever. Max will be doing his, and he'll be talking to his friends. So I think the social media there's enough on the downside of it, but I think a lot of it is, kept a lot of people going in terms of that ability to interact and maintain connection. How we would have coped with this pandemic, 15 years ago, is another matter entirely, in terms of the technologies that we had available to us. Now we've got what we've got now, and at least that level of affiliation, friendships, etc., can be maintained and even developed and created.
Yeah, I hear you, and I know you're right. The ability to stay connected has made it a lot easier than it would have been if we were 30 years ago without even the use of mobiles, for sure. Tim, thank you so much for joining me for one of these podcasts. I think it's been great. I know that your instinct was to say, well, it's not really my thing, Brad. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your insights. It's been excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.